So any form, any activity in life requires some sacrifice. And we talked about food in the three modes of material nature. Now Krishna talks about sacrifice in the three modes of material nature. And here, yajna or sacrifice doesn't just mean fire sacrifices. Fire sacrifice is a form of sacrifice. It's your sacrificing items into the fire. That's yajna, right? The fire represents the mouth of the Lord, and people put grains and fruits and things into the fire. But here, Krishna is speaking of all forms of sacrifice. Although we use the English word sacrifice, this category is that of yajna, meaning ceremonies or rituals of a religious or spiritual nature. What we generally think of with the English word sacrifice is described under the heading of austerity. So, but Krishna is not just talking about any form of sacrifice. He's not just speaking of fire sacrifices, but he's also not speaking about austerities that you do. It requires some sort of ritual or sacrifice. And so what is our form of sacrifice that we do in our tradition, in our process, in our bhakti yoga process? That's the central sacrifice. That's not austerity. It is a little austerity. That's the thing. These kind of overlap because every form of sacrifice requires austerity. Yes, Divya Bhakti Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I'm chanting the holy name, chanting the Maha Mantra.
Yes, Yajnanam Japa Yagyosmi. So Yajnanam Japa Yagyosmi means that of sacrifices, I am Krishna or Vishnu. So, yes. So that's a good example that sacrifice here is referring to chanting of the holy name, which, as we will see, is beyond the three modes. So sacrifice in pure love is beyond the three modes. It transcends the mode of goodness, meaning that it's in pure goodness. Shuddha Sattva is actually the state of pure goodness, which is above goodness, but it's still goodness. And this is why Sattva or goodness is the pathway to Shuddha Sattva. But material goodness can't sustain. It has passion and ignorance mixed in it. By definition, it has to have that mixed in it. If we want goodness without the passion and ignorance, then that is pure goodness. That is bhakti. So bhakti is done simply, what moves us from goodness to transcendence is the added element of love, right? So I'm good to someone, and a blind lady needs to cross the street, I help her cross the street. But that's a duty. It may or may not be done out of love. But when I take care of a family member, for example, or a close friend, I help them cross the street. It's not just the element of duty, but there's also bhakti there. And that is the additional adding factor. That's the transcendental factor. So goodness to please Krishna. One second, I just get some water. Then sacrifice in the mode of goodness is done according to scriptures. That's what differentiates sacrifice and goodness from other modes, because other modes we're doing sacrifice, but it's just made up. But in goodness, it's done according to the scriptures. It's as a matter of duty, and it's without desiring reward. Sacrifice in the mode of passion is for some material benefit, for the sake of pride. So people give tons of money to someone or some organization, but they do it for the reputation and the pride that they get. I was just speaking with a person, and this person um, was part of a team of people who were part of a business, and the business wasn't doing well, and so um, and so they all lost a lot of money, and this person didn't have the deep pockets that the others had. So once they had like he had lost enough money, he decided to pull out of it. And just a few weeks after he pulled out, having lost a lot of money, the business took off and they made millions, like millions upon millions. And after they made those millions, uh, the other partners in the business had no sense of feeling to repay this person who pulled out. And he was telling me that these people they go and they give charity, like more than what he lost. They give hundreds of thousands of dollars to charitable organizations, to temples, to good causes. Yet when he even asked them, can you, like now you've made millions, just I don't want any extra money, but just, I helped you at the beginning. Just uh, can you make up my loss? Can you just, reimburse me for the loss? Now that the business is successful, I realized I, which he clearly told them, due to his financial limitation, he had to pull out. He couldn't lose more money. Could you do that? And they said, no, no, we cannot. So on one hand, they were giving so much charity. Why not charity to him? He's a friend, right? But there's no fame or pride or material benefit in giving that charity to him, though that would be the compassionate, the kind thing to do, the right thing to do. That would be the correct thing to do. But uh, they're giving charity. They didn't want all the money themselves, and they're giving charity to all these other organizations, to big projects. Why? Because of the most important part for them is that people should know that I'm giving the charity, right? The pride associated with it. And it's actually after hearing this story that this principle, this this verse that Krishna mentions, came into sharp, focus for me. It's like, wow, like this is the mode of passion. And like one could be giving charity, one can be doing a good thing, but one could be doing it for one's own personal aggrandizement and the extent of it. Because I used to wonder, like, well, if someone's giving charity, fine, they might want to be recognized, but it's a huge sacrifice, isn't it? But not necessarily. I mean, this is the extent that it takes, that one can be so cruel to one group of people, yet so charitable to the other, because the key principle there is oneself. Another example, a wonderful example could be like, people give so much charity to an organization, might be their golf club, and it's a non-profit, so they give millions so that there can be 2 more acres of lawn. Yet there's people dying and starving of hunger in a different country. And it's like, well, why would I give even $10 there? Right? So they're giving charity, but it's not in the mode of goodness. It's in the mode of passion. It's I am the center, even in giving that charity. And then last thing is tamas, which is charity, which is or not charity, any sacrifice which is done without regard for scriptures, without distributing sanctified food. Without distributing sanctified food, very interesting, I'll get to this point, without hymns or remuneration to priests, without faith. Right? So, uh, there's a homeless man on the street, and the homeless man on the street comes and begs us, please give me some marijuana, give me some heroin, some LSD. And you think, wow, this person is suffering so much. Let me go and buy him some heroin and give it to him. It's a sacrifice, but it's sacrifice in the mode of ignorance, because we're not giving something that's good for them. We're not giving something with any regard to what the teachings of Krishna, the scriptures are telling us that, well, this is not good, teachings of any spiritual tradition. wouldn't recommend that, right? So it's without regard for scriptures. It's done in ignorance. Another example here that is being mentioned because it's so common is that, well, we get some religious service or some spiritual thing done, but then the person who's doing it is sent away with a few dollars in their hand. So giving remuneration to the priests in India, it's common, and you think, well, why do they do that? No, that we must give something to the priest because that is part of Krishna. Notice that that's part of our offering to Krishna. If we care for Krishna, we care for his people, we care for the devotees. And um, what's very interesting is that any sacrifice, any program that we do, if it's not accompanied with the distribution of sanctified food, the distribution of prasadam, then Krishna is saying that it's in the mode of ignorance. So in fact, the prasadam is what completes the sacrifice. It completes the program. Because people say, why do y'all guys always have food and you ask us to take food? Because that's the nature. I mean, that's where the sweetness is shared, right? The reciprocation is done over food. People make business deals, people make friends. Where? At the restaurant. That's the main place when they share food together. And one of the kind of a reverse lesson from this is that if association means sharing food, so if we want to avoid an association that is not conducive for spiritual life, it's very important to not share food, right? We can have a business relationship, but when we take it to association, it generally involves food. So that's why, that's the reason why we don't go to like a steakhouse or any place that serves meat generally, because because that's where food is not like we said, in the mode of goodness. It's meat, and that's not in the mode of goodness. So the distribution of sanctified food makes it um, uh, makes it spiritual because it's sanctified. It's the mercy of Krishna, and it shares Krishna's love. Whereas simply doing it without that is Krishna saying in tamas. So that's austerity. This is actually the last one. We ran out of time last time because I had a hard stop. But now that's part one. These were different foods and sacrifices in the different modes of nature. Now part two, text 14 to 28. This is, I'm not sure why it's divided into parts, but it's now focusing particularly on faith and faith in the three modes of nature. So we could have just continued it. We said food, austerity, and faith, but this is somehow in a different section. So austerity in the modes of nature. Austerity has three aspects: austerity of body, speech, and mind. There's three aspects. Austerity of the body involves worship of the Supreme Lord, worship of the Brahmanas, worship of the spiritual master, worship of the parents, cleanliness, simplicity, non-violence, and celibacy. So Krishna is so amazing. Like, this chapter is so amazing. He goes through each type of austerity. And he starts with austerity of the body. I mean, like, what a way of dividing it. And you think about it deeply, we have to practice all these three things. Like, austerity of speech is a big thing for me. Like, don't say anything. You should not say anything. And I was like, I have to say something. No, don't say. For some of us, the body one is most important. For some of us, the mind wants to just go everywhere. Chanting, in some ways, is an austerity of the mind. It's a practice in the austerity of the mind. So here we're doing austerity of the body. So wherever our words and mind is, with our body, at least, we should worship the Supreme Lord. Which this was like such a simple thing, but an eye-opener for me, because sometimes, like, if I go for Mangalarti, my mind is completely somewhere else. Like, devotionally, mentally, emotionally, I'm not there. Yet still after that, I feel good. I feel better than not going. Why? Because I'm trying to perform the austerity of the body. When we go attend Mangalartik or we chant, even if for mind and words are not, everything is not there, Krishna appreciates it because we're performing the austerity of the body. The most important one being worship Krishna. Then worship of the Brahmanas. Okay, we don't feel like it, we're not thinking, good things or whatnot, but at least if we worship the devotees, we take care of them, we serve them. With our physical body, Krishna is pleased. Worship of the spiritual master, very important, right? The spiritual master is kind of the leading Brahmana or devotee, and following their instructions, worshiping them, offering, again, it's like, well, so these are just the physical functions, but the physical functions are part of the austerity of the body. Let me offer some lamp to the picture of my spiritual master, etc. Then worship of the parents. The actual verse says that the austerity of body consists of service to the parents and the spiritual master. Worship means service in this case, service to the Brahmanas, service to the Supreme Lord. So all these are our superiors. They're our elders. They're our, in some ways, like we come from God. We get spiritual life from the spiritual master. We come from our parents. So it's natural for us to reciprocate. And that reciprocation is through service. Then cleanliness, being clean, is an austerity of the body. It automatically pleases the Lord when we try to be clean. Simplicity, not collecting too much, not having too much, not wanting, too much. That is the austerity of the body. I need a new set of clothes every day. I need a new new pair of socks or shoes every week. There's Mr. Ambani's daughter-in-law, the most expensive wedding in the history of humankind, something like $2 billion or something on a wedding, imagine. But it's said that she never wears the same dress twice, right? And each dress is $100,000 easily. So that's being unsimple, that's displeasing to Krishna, even if you have the wealth, because it's not practicing simplicity. Non-violence is an austerity of the body. That's why we avoid, as much as possible, killing other living beings for our food, because it's the austerity of the body. Yes, it is an austerity. We can't just eat anything or anywhere, but we're happy to do it. And the last one, which in today's society is very important, is celibacy. And Prabhupada defines this: he should not indulge in sex outside of married life, for sex is sanctioned in the scripture only in marriage, not otherwise. This is called celibacy. So Prabhupada defines to us what celibacy is. Even a good householder, a devotee householder, is celibate. Celibacy means no illicit sex. Austerity and sattva of speech. What are the austerities of speech? So I read these very carefully. Speaking what is truthful. Speaking about things that are pleasing. Speaking words that are beneficial. Using words that are not agitating to others. Regularly reciting Vedic literature. So there's this wonderful quotation from Srila Prabhupada, and it came as I read it just yesterday. It's very relevant. Let me read this for you. Wish I could share it, but I'll just read it. Prabhupada says, the real fact is that if there's any difficulty with others, that is my lack of Krishna consciousness, not theirs. Is this clear? He's writing a letter to one devotee. He says, the real fact is that if there's any difficulty with others, that is my lack of Krishna consciousness, not theirs. Is that clear? So a person who's very Krishna conscious, somehow, due to their spiritual advancement, due to their purity of heart and the inspiration that Krishna gives them from within their heart, knows how to use the words that are not agitating to others. And they're not agitated by the words of others. They also don't get agitated because they're Krishna conscious. They're fully fixed in Krishna. They understand Krishna's in control. No one else is in control. Whatever Krishna does is for my benefit. And the last one is regularly reciting Vedic literature. So what should the speech be used in? Krishna's not just telling us the negative, he's telling us the positive. Negative is don't do these things, don't speak lies, don't, be harsh in your words. The positive side is, what should I do with my words? Then use it to speak about Krishna. Recite Vedic literature means speaking about Krishna, glorify his devotees. And that is the austerity of speech, to use it for the right purpose. And that becomes the perfection of our life. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the mouth can be used to drink poison or to drink nectar. The same mouth. When we use this mouth to criticize devotees, we're using it to drink poison. When we use that same mouth to glorify devotees and Krishna, then we are using that mouth to drink nectar. So the austerity of the tongue is not to drink poison, but to drink nectar. And once we are addicted to that nectar, then that's what we want to do. We say, why should I waste my time, criticizing others, finding fault in others? Instead, I will use my time in glorifying Krishna, in use my time to smell the roses of Krishna's lotus feet. Austerity and sattva of speech is words that are truthful, pleasing, and beneficial words. Text 15. One should speak the truth, defined as what is upheld in the Vedic scriptures. And one must be prepared to quote from the scriptures to back up one's statements. Speech should be pleasing to the ear, not harsh. And what we say should benefit the hearers. If there's no benefit to speaking the truth, one should be silent. Of the three main principles here, truth, pleasure, and benefit, the most important is benefit. Our truthful statements should have a positive effect on us and those to whom we speak. Wow. This is so wonderful. So words must be truthful, pleasurable, and beneficial. But the most important principle is they should be beneficial. So I have two small children, and sometimes if they're very naughty, I have to be, their mother and I and their grandmother have to be strict with them, right? It's not pleasing for them to hear that they can't have another box of ice cream when they've already finished one, or they can't eat sugar all day. In fact, Balaram, who's 4 years old, starts crying, like he's very angry. But those words are beneficial for him. And they're effective and beneficial because of who he is. On the other hand, if someone is doing something clearly wrong, but we know that their ears are closed, they're not going to hear us. In fact, they become more incensed and they'll become angry. Then there's no benefit in telling them the truth because it won't be beneficial for them. In fact, it may even make them become more inimical and thus do even worse things. So that's why you sometimes wonder that this is a great soul, but why didn't they say anything? Because they're not just interested in seeing and saying what's the truth, but they're also seeing that, will that person accept it if I say it? On the other hand, when we are giving a class, when we're giving a lecture in general to an audience, sometimes it's more easier to say things that are watered down, that are not, things that are pleasurable to the audience. Like, for example, someone say, oh, it's okay once in a while to, it's like, in other words, it's hard to tell an audience that really you shouldn't eat meat because people are accustomed to eating meat. That's what their diet is, and they feel offended. when you say that the scripture, the Gita, is saying that it's not in the mode of goodness. But Prabhupada is saying here, but no, it's our duty and we must say what the scriptures are saying. So we should not teach a watered down philosophy. In fact, Prabhupada in one or two places says that we should speak strongly. Like we should be clear and strong, because if we don't speak the truth, then who will speak the truth? How will people get to know it? So sometimes, like if someone's doing something wrong, to contradict what I was saying before, give a kind of an option, an alternative. Sometimes it's important to once say it, so they know. They cannot say that they haven't heard the truth. No one told me the truth. How do I know? Even if we know they won't accept it, but at least say it once, so that when they do accept it, 5 years down the road, when they hear and they realize I made a mistake, at that time they will remember that, So sometimes it's necessary to mention it to people, to say it, but then trying to force them to admit that they did wrong, or trying to say it again or change them, may not be beneficial, may not be worth it, because it won't be beneficial. So this is and it's easier said than done, right? The austerity of a speech is easier said than done, because it really takes a lot of spiritual advancement, and I'm not even 2% there. So I'm just telling theory that our truthfulness, our words, we have to speak words that are truthful, pleasing, and beneficial. Krishna has given us a very high task, and he's given us very good guidance also, very amazing guidance that can be helpful for us. Some people are just, they're just duplicitous. They don't speak the truth. They just, they just flatter whoever they meet. Some people are truthful, and then when they're truthful, they lose in life. They lose the job, or they lose the promotion because they're truthful. They said the right thing, and they lost it. And then they start thinking, well, it was better not to be truthful. I should have been duplicitous, like this other person, because look, they advanced. But the first one is completely wrong, not pleasing to Krishna, because they don't have the principles. The second one also is a little wrong. They have to be truthful, but then also very expert, and that may not be possible sometimes, but that's Krishna's kind of goal that we are going towards, is how can we influence others in ways that uplifts them and tells them the truth. One way of assessing benefit is to consider whether or not the listeners are our students. In other words, whether or not the persons to whom we are speaking have agreed formally or informally to listen to us. If such a contract exists, then we may speak seemingly harsh, beneficial truths. But if there's no such contract, then generally we don't give instruction. This is why one of the 10 offenses is to preach the glories of the holy name to the faithless, because they didn't agree to accepting instruction from us. So us trying to impose it on them sometimes makes them worse, or you could say makes them more repelled away from spiritual truth. But if there is a formal or informal contract, like for example, you do a program, you invite people and they come for the program. Well, when they come, they know they're full knowledge that they're coming to hear someone. And even if they're not, their decision to sit there and listen is showing a willingness and openness to hear. So then that contract exists and we can give instruction. We can give that guidance. So very wonderful principles are mentioned here. We shouldn't preach to someone who's already indicated to us they don't want to listen to us. So then how do we help them? Well, we don't tell them what to do. Rather, we offer them Krishna Prasadam, Krishna says in the Gita, we engage them in the devotional service of Krishna. So they're not willing to hear, but maybe they're willing to help. They're willing to serve Krishna, come and do volunteer service at the temple. And in this way, we help them advance, and one day their heart changes. And I've seen this so many times because we do a small bhakti vriksha, that people who are so tight and uptight before, they don't want to hear anything. They're like, you don't tell me anything. And, they don't want to even come so often. But if they keep coming and after like a month, 4 months, nothing happens, after a year or year and a half, you notice, oh, something changed, like their heart softens because they're taking Krishna Prasadam. And they start to realize that there's something good here. Like what I'm hearing actually makes sense, or what I'm hearing helped my life in a very tangible way, or it helped my wife, or it helped my children. And 2 or 3 individuals, just particularly recently, like they were so cold before. I was like, like how do I connect with this person, or how do I make friendship or whatnot? And now all of a sudden they're just so sweet. Like they're it's like, is this the same person or not? So just by the atmosphere, we should encourage people to connect with the atmosphere. Just by the atmosphere, their heart changes, may change. Again, still it's individual. So someone's heart may not change for many years, but eventually, or generally speaking, for most people, it changes just by connecting with Krishna conscious atmosphere, because that association, the talks, the vibrations, they touch the heart. When speaking or writing, therefore, we should ask, is this true? Can its truth be supported in the scriptures? Has this person, by their words, social position, or actions, exhibited a sincere willingness to accept the truth I will speak? Will this truth and the manner in which I'm presenting it actually benefit me and the hearer? Am I presenting it in the most beneficial way possible? Is my presentation in pleasing language so that it is more likely to be accepted? So even if we correct someone because they are causing a disruption, our correction or our trying to fix the situation can sometimes cause a bigger disruption than the initial disruption, right? So Mother Urmila once was mentioning this to her, that someone in the team was not doing what they were supposed to do, and so she chastised them, and that chastisement kind of caused a disruption in the team more than the person not doing what they're supposed to do. So she was just self-reflecting. She's a very advanced Vaishnavi, so she's very humble, and that's why she was saying that. But that's a good example, right? That, well, what will cause a bigger, what's the most beneficial way to do this? So Bhagavatam says very nicely, it says, sharp arrows which pierce one's chest and reach the heart do not cause as much suffering as the arrows of harsh, insulting words that become lodged within the heart when spoken by uncivilized men. So true. So arrows that pierce the heart are more welcome than harsh, insulting words. Then another verse in the Bhagavatam says that those who emit harsh words, they reduce the duration of their life. So it has consequences, it's not just physical things that we do to others that have consequences. The words that we say to others also have consequences, and people are very harsh. They will get their own karma in due course of time. Austerity in sattva is of the mind is as follows. So what's the austerity of the mind? Satisfaction, the first one that Krishna mentions. Simplicity, gravity, self-control, purification of one's existence. So very interesting. Austerity of the mind is satisfaction. Now, generally, we think of that as a state. But here, Krishna, austerity is something that's practiced, right? Austerity means a practice. You're practicing austerity. So here, Krishna is actually saying that satisfaction is a practice. It's not just a state. Because there is no state when we'll be satisfied. But we can practice being satisfied. We must practice being satisfied. That I have a very, Krishna's given me gifts in life, and I'm satisfied with that. Simplicity, being simple. Gravity, not changing, jumping around, changing our mind all the time, right? Changing this, changing that, but being grave. Will this change actually improve me, or will it change things really? Self-control. So that's a big austerity of the mind. So I want to drink, I want to take the cigarette, I want to, eat that sugar ball, but I will control myself. And finally, purification of one's existence. Austerity of the mind is to be fixed in Krishna consciousness and always think of the welfare of others. This will lead to satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of existence, which are also austerities of the mind. So this will lead to satisfaction, simplicity. So what are the two things Prabhupada specifically mentions? And everything else becomes included in those things, to be fixed in Krishna consciousness and always think of the welfare of others. So if we switch it and we think, well, what will make others happy? What will make these people happy that are competing with me? Let them get what they want. But we also have to think, well, what will be good for people in general? Okay, I give them what they want, but that won't be good for the service of Krishna or for the welfare of others. So we judge in terms of what is the highest welfare, and the highest welfare is to please Krishna and to offer people Krishna consciousness. Each of these austerities are progressively more difficult. It is harder to control speech than the body, and harder to control the mind than speech. So, body, words, and mind. Right? When we control our body, then we can start controlling our words. When we control our body and our words, then we get the strength to control our mind. And in the practice of Krishna consciousness, you'll start practicing this. You'll see this. But when I do these two things, when I'm spending my time reading and chanting, then this becomes easier. And then I can try for this. I can intentionally try to control my mind. A control meaning engage the mind in something better. See, our form of control is not restriction. Our understanding of control is giving the mind, body, and words better engagement so that we avoid the not so good engagement. The stage of Nishta or Brahma Bhuta is when all three, body, mind, and words, are fully controlled and used only to serve Krishna. In this stage, this control is not yet fully spontaneous, but uses determined willpower. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that generally one will first become fixed in body, then in words, and then in mind, though the order will vary according to an individual's personal strength. So this is a very nice point, that sometimes it doesn't always start with body for a lot of people. Sometimes it starts with the words, because, for example, someone cannot give up the urges of the body in some way, so many forms like that. They're still very attached to drinking and all these things. But if they start chanting, then the chanting uh, uh, is engaging the words, and that chanting inspires them very easily to give up the bodily, to perform the bodily austerities. So now Krishna talks about that these austerities can be done with different mindsets. Austerity and goodness should be for our own internal purification and permanent satisfaction. So I mentioned that this section was about faith. So now he's talking about austerity with faith and without faith. So austerity with faith, it's done not to prove one's austerity to others, one's greatness, austerity, power, but rather one is doing it for one's own internal purification and satisfaction. Austerity in rajas is for increasing respect, honor, and worship. So austerity in the mode of passion is when we do the austerity so that we can become a hero. And in passion, one does austerity to gain temporary respect and adoration. And finally, austerity in tamas is foolishly done to harm oneself and others. So it's austerity in the mode of ignorance. The effect of it, the mindset and the effect of it is harm. While austerities in passion will probably indirectly cause pain to others, austerity in ignorance is done with the deliberate intention to hurt others and oneself. One in goodness should therefore always desire others' welfare, even if those others hurt oneself. Even if those others hurt oneself. This is a very principle, so hard to forget. Just this morning, I was forgetting this principle. That we should desire the welfare of even those who may want to hurt us. And that's the austerity in the mode of goodness. Austerity in ignorance is like Hiranyakashipu. He was one of the most austere ascetics in the world, but he was trying to gain power so he could control the whole world. He could become the king of heaven and earth, the whole world. And he, as a result of his austerity, gets those powers and he starts to harass the entire creation, particularly his son Prahlad Maharaj. And then Krishna comes and, kills him, right? Finishes him off. So that is the key thing here, that this type of austerity doesn't help one. So summary of austerity. Bhakti and goodness for the pleasure of Krishna is austerity that's transcendental. In mode of goodness, body means worship of God and superiors, cleanliness, celibacy, and non-violence. Words means truthfulness, pleasing, sweet words beneficial based on scriptures, and mind means satisfaction, gravity, and self-control. Rajas is austerity done out of pride, for respect, honor, and worship. It's not stable or permanent because once the honor goes away or once you get the honor, you give it up. And in ignorance, we do it out of foolishness with desire for self-torture or to destroy or injure others. It's like, another example of austerity in the mode of ignorance is the Olympics. Right? You see so many of the sports people, we worship them and celebrate them, but you see the torture that they go through to get to where they're at. I mean, like how much they must have just, they burned their bodies, they got knee surgery, this, that, and yet they're still doing it just so for that moment of that, yellow piece of metal and the honor that goes along with it. So it's a little pride, rajas, and some tamas. Sports is very good. Nothing against sports at all. Sports can be in the mode of goodness, but Prabhupada said actually that when it gets too competitive, it can become rajas and tamas. Like sometimes even parents, right, they push their children so hard in sports because they just want people to know that my son, he's a gold medalist or national champion. Then we have charity in the modes. Okay, we did austerity, now we're doing charity. This is a very wonderful chapter. Every chapter of the Gita is so wonderful. It's like so deep. This is why Krishna is so wonderful. So these are the things that we can give charity of. Charity, Krishna here is not just speaking about money. We can give our time, our words, our intelligence, our knowledge, objects, and place. Charity will help us make spiritual advancement if it is in connection with Krishna. Given to spiritually advanced people at a holy place or an auspicious time, simply helping a poor person is not necessarily spiritual. Again, back to my same example, giving a homeless person heroin is not charity. Real charity is something that helps a person materially and spiritually. And charity is when it's done without fruit of desire and in the right way to the right person. The proper charity given with the wrong attitude can be in the mode of passion or ignorance. My example of this devotee who was telling me of how they were giving charity, but cheating him, right? So that's done with the wrong attitude. Charity that will only increase someone's material entanglement is also in passion. One can actually become more materially entangled by giving charity. You give charity and then you have a group of people that worship you, and then you really start to enjoy that worship. You see that even in temples, this person, they're rich and they know if they give another 10,000, everyone's going to worship them, and they keep waiting until people worship them until they can give that money. Of course, it's still always good to give and for them to give because it purifies the heart. But Krishna here wants us to come to the highest level of spiritual life, and that's why he's making these subtle distinctions. But giving is always better than not giving, whatever our motivation is, as long as it's for the right purpose and in the right way. But to make it even better, we should also develop the correct motivation. When we collect charity for our Krishna conscious activities, we should consider whether or not our means of encouraging giving brings out people's goodness or passion. Do we encourage them to seek recognition in exchange for their gift? So sometimes one needs to do that. I mean, this is just the world of charity. Like, especially wealthy people, they're going to do that anyway. They want recognition. So many, well, not everyone, but some wealthy people, they want recognition. And by giving them the recognition and asking them for charity for a good cause, at least you're engaging their wealth and engaging them in something that will uplift them rather than spending money, as I mentioned, on their golf course. They may give it for serving free vegetarian meals, but they are determined that they must get recognition. So that is okay. That's not what exactly is being spoken here. What's being spoken is that we, in exchange for giving them that charity, we tell them, you are God. You are the greatest saint. We give them a false understanding of who they are. And that may not help them. So appreciation is important. That's a distinction. Appreciation is important, but not misleading people in exchange for their gift. Not simply flattering them. Charity and passion can also be at the request of a superior or with regret afterwards. We need to take care not to push people to give when they really don't want to. So, uh, uh, because if they're pushed to give when they don't want to, then it'll be in the mode of passion, right? Sorry, 1 second. They don't really want to. They just do it because they're forced to do it. Now, the contrast to this is that, well, if someone's really stingy and they don't give anything, or if they're not giving for the right purpose, then pushing them a little is okay, because they're not going to give anything. So at least they're doing charity in the mode of passion. They're not doing it at all. And when something's very good, you must do it. Like, this medicine is going to help someone, right? You get the medicine from the CVS. It's going to help a family member. It's going to help this, but this person is not willing to take it. Well, one has to, if it's truly the case that this medicine will save their life, one has to push them. So in the same way, that's kind of like the thing about spiritual knowledge is that unless we actually uh, push people to see it, like sometimes they're under their bed sheets and they're not willing to wake up even though they're awake. So they need a little bit of a push. But here again, it's more speaking about the idea of force, that one is not forcing another person to practice or to give. One wants to encourage them to do it voluntarily. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So the message here is not to give. The message here is, let's be a cheerful giver, not reluctantly. I'm happy for what I gave. I'm satisfied that Krishna appreciated it. If someone else didn't or did, doesn't matter. But my success was in offering this service for Krishna. Sometimes when we're serving in a temple, the authority, the devotee for whom we are doing it, they asked us, and we do it for them. We make sacrifices for doing that service. And then that same person, we make some mistake, and then that same person is very ungrateful for our service. And then we think, well, why did I do this, right? And I was thinking that the reason why Krishna makes those situations, that the person we did it for becomes very ungrateful, is to remind us that, no, we didn't do it for them. We did it for Krishna. Because if we did it for them, then it's a failure. And we clearly don't feel that way, because we know that the service was good. They misunderstood. So then who appreciated? It's Krishna who appreciated. And the consciousness that I'm doing it for them was the wrong consciousness to begin with. When we give or when we serve, we're serving and giving for Krishna. And hopefully the devotees and everyone will be satisfied. But as long as Krishna, the spiritual master, the devotees in general are like, the advanced devotees who are seeing the service are satisfied, then it's a success. We can be happy that the service that we did was successful. Charity in tamas means to improper person or a wrong place or without proper respect. Text 22. Ignorant charity can be where the externals are the same as in goodness, but one's mentality is in ignorance. Or one can be giving externally to someone or something that promotes harm in society. So one's giving, but without respect, while giving, belittling the person you're giving it to. Here, and take it, and hey, you little, nothing. Sometimes people give to poor like this. So that's in the mode of ignorance. We are fortunate, therefore we have, and we're giving to others. But just because someone's unfortunate and we're giving to them doesn't make them less than us. Because today we are fortunate, tomorrow we may be unfortunate. Or giving to, National Rifle Association, so that more guns can be made. That can be giving to something that promotes more harm in society. Well, I know that's a controversial point, but just as a kind of an example of not being very clear on where we are giving, what we are giving to. So this is charity summarized. Bhakti in goodness is to please Krishna. So pure goodness. So in sattva, charity is given out of duty, without expectation of return, proper time and place, and to a worthy person. Rajas, without expectation of return, with expectation of return or desire for fruitive results. In a grudging mood, with regret later, out of obligation. Tamas is charity at an impure place, improper time, and to unworthy persons, without proper attention and respect. Sattvic charity, hands help from a happy heart. So hands help from a happy heart. Your hands are helping from a happy heart. Okay. So now we have the next theme, getting free from defects in all these things. What's the process of getting freedom? I'll try to get through this very fast, so we have some time left for questions. The main theme is activities directed toward the satisfaction of the Lord. Take one out from the influence of the three modes and lead to an eternal life. So we have understood all this theoretically, but as I mentioned, it's all easier said than done. So how do we actually do it? How do we come to that platform of pure goodness? So everything happens in a wonderful way. This can happen only when we are engaged in the service of Krishna. As I mentioned before, when we have the higher taste, the positive taste of serving Krishna, then we can give up the lower taste of wanting to dominate material world, material life. When one performs penance, charity, and sacrifice with these three words, Om Tat Sat, he is acting in Krishna consciousness. So all penance, charity, and sacrifice must be done while glorifying Krishna. This is why we are always chanting. Because then when we're doing those things, but our consciousness is fixed on Krishna. Text 23, as long as austerity, yajna, and charity are performed in the modes of nature, they are materially contaminated. The words Om Tat Sat in the Vedic hymns indicate that an act must satisfy the Vedic hymns, the Supreme Lord to qualify as spiritual. When Om Tat Sat is chanted, along with the performance of sacrifice, charity, and austerity, it removes the discrepancies inherent in those activities and ensures that the consciousness of all participants is elevated. Om Tat Sat is, now we'll look into it. What do these mean? Om Tat Sat is a Vedic mantra, and here Krishna is mentioning Om Tat Sat, or Om, as we will see, refers to any of the Lord's holy names. Prabhupada says, the sound of Om in the beginning of every Vedic hymn addresses the Supreme Lord. Because the impersonalists are very much afraid of addressing the Supreme Lord, Krishna, by his innumerable names, it should be innumerable, they prefer to vibrate the transcendental sound Omkar. But they do not realize that Omkar is the sound representation of Krishna. The jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness extends everywhere, and one who knows Krishna consciousness is blessed. Those who do not know Krishna are in illusion, and so knowledge of Krishna is liberation, and ignorance of him is bondage. So beautiful. So when Krishna is saying we must accompany our work with the words Om Tat Sat, it's referring to accompanying our work with the names of Krishna. That's why chanting is accompanies all the limbs of devotional service. It's incessantly, it's to be always done. Srila Prabhupada writes extensively about the Pranava Omkar in his purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 7:128. So I don't know if I have time to go through all of this. Um, uh, the letter A denotes Balaram, the son of Rohini, who is a substratum of the entire universe. The letter U is Om is A-U-M, denotes Pradyumna, who is the supersoul of the universe. The letter M denotes Aniruddha, who is the supersoul of each individual being in the universe. And the Bindu dot above the M denotes Sri Krishna, the fountainhead of all Vishnu incarnations. So there's many different definitions of Om. Prabhupada here is quoting the Gopal Tapani Upanishad and giving us the most authoritative understanding of this word Om. Om refers to Balaram, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Krishna. So Om essentially refers to the Chaturvyuha. Vasudev is Krishna, Sankarshan is Balaram, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. These are the four different, you could say, expansions of Krishna. And Om is a spiritual vibration, a holy name that is referring to all four of the Chaturvyuha. Okay, and I'm going to skip through some of this. So Om is used both by those desiring liberation and those following the Vedic rituals for materialistic purposes, but Tat is only used to become free from fruitive activities. So Om refers to Krishna, Tat refers to becoming free from fruitive activities. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same platform. The Lord, sorry, here on the side it says, the Lord, the devotees, and the process of devotion are all Sat or eternal. They are not material. So now Sat refers to the entire spiritual world. Om Tat Sat. Om Krishna. Tat means breaking away from fruitive activities, meaning the material world, and Sat means entering the spiritual world. Om Tat, give up the material world, fruitive activities, Sat, attain the Supreme Lord. That's the meaning of Om Tat Sat. And Krishna says when we are doing Om Tat Sat, that is thinking of Krishna always, giving up the material world, entering the spiritual consciousness, the spiritual world, then whatever we do will gradually become established in the mode of goodness, because we'll see things in terms of how is it taking me and others back to the spiritual world. Okay, so I'm going to end here. Are there any questions? This is the whole chapter. I'm just skipping some of the summaries because at the end Haripriya always gives us a good summary, so no need to give a second one. Yes. Any comments, questions?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sorry, I'm not able to raise my hand. I don't know somehow.
Yes.
Uh,
No
new
problem.
chat. Yeah, 2-3 questions. Sorry for that. But yeah, the very first was related to austerity in sattva of speech, where it was, talked that will this truth and the manner in which I'm presenting it actually benefit me and hearer. So yeah, that was something. I'm going to say everything that I should talk, I should make sure that it is benefiting me as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
You see, that's a good point. Yes.
yeah, and the next point was related to purification of existence for the mind, So I could not get that point. If you can please elaborate a little more.
So purification of the mind, that quotation was there for that. Prabhupada is saying that austerity of the mind is to purify the mind, which means one very good example of that is reading the scriptures. Right? By reading Srimad Bhagavatam, our mind becomes purified. And so the austerity of the mind is to take time out to read, to absorb our mind in thoughts of Krishna. Reading the Krishna book. Prabhupada said if we read the Krishna book at night, then we will dream of Krishna while we sleep. So that's purification of the mind. Applying our mind to do some difficult service, like that requires many parts and pieces, that purifies the mind because we're using the mind and the intelligence in Krishna's service. So purification of the mind is the austerity of the mind, that I'm going to use the mind not in just watching TV or or just doing gossip, but I'll use the mind in actually in activities that purify it.
Yeah, and the last question was Prabhuji related to Om Tat Sat. This Om Tat Sat, means body, body, mind, and words, right? That that was mentioned. Three things. So
Yes.
should we use this word Om Tat Sat every time, thinking that I'm offering this to the Lord, or I'm going to say I'm still not clear with this. Suddenly that Om Tat Sat coming
Yes.
in.
So the final section of this chapter, Krishna is describing how do we come to the transcendental platform. And the way we do that, he's saying, is by offering everything to the Lord. Yes, not being fruitive, but constantly remembering the name of Krishna, which is signified by Om. So by chanting his holy name. So Prabhupada says that whatever we do, everything that we do should be accompanied by the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And this is so true. Like if we chant while we do anything, everything goes well. It's so true. Like I'm in sometimes I go for book distribution, and sometimes books are not going out, and I just start to chant in my mind, or even while giving someone a chanting, and then things start working. They start happening. People start coming. Things are working. So the chanting is very powerful, and because that's making us think of Krishna while we do it. Like Krishna tells Arjuna to fight, and people think, oh, that's the message of the Gita, that we should fight, karma yoga, right? But he doesn't just say that. He says, mam anusmara yudhyacha, that fight while thinking of me. Think of me and fight. So that's the Om Tat Sat, that it's not just enough to do austerity, charity, and penance and try to do it in the mode of goodness, but we must think of Krishna. We must have the right consciousness and intention and motivation by absorbing our mind in Krishna, calling out to him, and thus getting his mercy. And while doing that, performing these activities, and that will then gradually lead us to the mode of goodness.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. That clarified.
Thank you. Nice questions. Very nice comments and questions. Thank you. Salja, Mataji.
Thank you for the wonderful class. As always, I wouldn't call it, like this is brilliant. Thank you very much. I have a question. The austerity of the mind being satisfaction. And I think that's a tough one sometimes, especially as you engage in material life. I would love to get your perspective, because the reality is that you have to engage. You do go to work, and the work there is all about, finding satisfaction is that place where then you don't grow, right? So what I'm trying to understand is, on one side, we did talk about, I think in a couple of classes back, that you get what you desire and what you deserve, right?
Yes.
Then on the other hand, we're saying, let's be satisfied. Then there is no desire. And I understand the desire should be for Krishna.
Yes.
But in the material life, the desire, including that in the whole process, the desire requires you not to be satisfied in a way, I guess.
Yes.
And I'd love to get your perspective, especially as you teach kids, right? I mean, we probably are in a phase of life where we get it, but how do you help the kids grow without telling them to have a desire to do better, right? I
Yes.
would love to get your perspective on that. And
Yes, this is such a nice, this is such a wonderful, such a nice question, because on one hand, we have to be a little ambitious. We cannot be fully satisfied. Dissatisfaction of some sorts is in some ways the catalyst of moving forward. So, and also the other points that you mentioned. So it's Prabhupada says actually that how Mother Yashoda is always in anxiety. She's always in anxiety, and she's one of Krishna's greatest devotees. But she's always in anxiety for Krishna. So the purpose and the intention, that's the most important part. So she's in anxiety for Krishna's welfare, for Krishna's service. So that's again and again in this chapter, Krishna is saying, Prabhupada is saying that we must always act for the service of others, and what's the second thing? For the welfare of others. So our anxiety should be there. Our ambition should be there. But our ambition should be for pleasing Krishna, that I'm going to get really good at this so I can serve Krishna nicely. Our ambition should be, I'm going to do this so I can help so many people and improve others and help them on their path of Krishna consciousness, right? But we can train children and ourselves that don't think I'm doing this so that I can become, the next movie star, that I can be the center of the world. So I can be special. I want to be special. I'm aspiring for that, but special not as a master, but special as a servant, special as the servant of Krishna, special to Krishna, special to Srila Prabhupada and the devotees and the Vaishnavas. Right?
Got it. So take it to the level, and this makes a lot of sense, Prabhu. Thank you for that reminder, bringing in Krishna, right?
Yes.
Like, don't get too lustful about it and passionate about it, where you're just going crazy with it, that it starts to destroy your spiritual life. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that reminder.
Yes, and even in spiritual life, like you're saying, we don't want to endeavor so much that we lose the forest for the trees, that we forget the purpose of this is to please Krishna and do this cheerfully, as it was mentioned. That I engage in so much spiritual activity that I actually forget why I'm doing it. So even in spiritual life, we have to be careful. And the point that you had mentioned, that that's exactly the point, that Krishna must be the center always. In any way, if we make Krishna the center, then we can even be ambitious, but it's for Krishna. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. Much appreciated.
Thank you. All right, Haripriya, we are ready for you. Thank you.
Yes, Rudy. So I just want Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Rudy. So I just had some points. So my first point is we can see that yajna, sacrifice, is chanting the holy name of Krishna. So yajna is, in other words, to do something that is about the three modes of material nature, and we can see that chanting the holy name of Krishna is above the three modes of material nature. So the different types of sacrifices. So in bhakti in bhakti our sacrifice is to please Krishna. In sattva gun, our sacrifices are to according to scriptures, without desiring award as a matter of duty. And then in rajagun, for some material benefit for the sake of pride. And in tamogun, without regard of the scriptures, without distributing sanctified food, without hymns or without remuneration to priests,
Remuneration, yes.
Remuneration to priests, and without faith. And then in sattvagun, austerity means to do not indulge in anything bad, worship the parents, spiritual master, brahmanas, and supreme lord. One should keep cleanliness, simplicity, and non-violence, and celibacy. So austerity in sattvagun, of speech is speaking what is truthful, pleasing, beneficial, unagitating, and regularly reciting the Vedic literatures. And an austerity of mind in goodness is satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, purification of one's existence. And then charity in the modes charity is not just money. Charity should also be used for Krishna. So in goodness, charity is used in the proper way. In passion, charity is used in the improper way. And in ignorance, charity means to give the charity to a wrong person or without any proper result. So theme is activity is directed toward the satisfaction of Krishna. Take one out of the influence of the three modes and lead to an eternal life forever. So Om is the name of Krishna that impersonalists call him. So A we can see is Balram, U is Pradyumna, M is Aniruddha, and the M with the dot above is Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you so much. Well done. Yes, you very nicely summarized it, and you brought us to the main points. And
Thank you.
yes, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so everyone, we will end here. I shared both chapters, homework 17 and 18. We're done with chapter 17. We have one more chapter to go. And next time, we'll talk more about the details of the exam. Again, to take the exam, you have to submit and complete all the homework, have watched all the classes or attended them. You must attend at least something like 75% of the classes, and the rest you can, but have seen 100% of them. And then you can take the exam. If you weren't able to attend 75%, that's still okay, but you must see all of them and you must do all the homework. And the students who are doing this for the degree, they will take the exam. And so we will discuss that more next time. Right now, let's all focus on finishing the homework and the readings. If you can't take the exam now, that's also okay. Now meaning after we're done with chapter 18, which will take another 2 weeks. We still have a lot of time, but you can take it later. But try to do it as soon as possible because it's fresh in your mind, right? It's fresh in your mind. So we also have the verses. So after we finish chapter 18, I generally give students like 2 weeks to prepare for the exam. You'll have more than sufficient time to go over the verses, even more time. So yeah, we'll do that. Okay. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all.